All right, guys, what's up? It's Brandon here, and today we are going to be talking about how to write the best offer or how to talk to your agent so that you could write the best offer and win the house that you're looking for. So, this applies to mainly properties that are on the market. It doesn't apply to stuff that's off the market because generally the seller or whoever is representing the seller is going to be calling the terms on those. So, first thing is you're going to want to make sure you get pre-approved. It's super important to get pre-approved with a lender, especially a local lender, because a local lender is going to be able to close quickly and they're going to have a little more flexibility with their underwriting and their processing if they are in-house. So ask your lender if they have in-house processors and in-house underwriters, because if you're working with a larger bank, usually like it takes longer to close because they're reshuffling that file and they're putting it back at the top if it has to go back into underwriting or processing. So make sure you use a local lender because they're going to have more flexibility. Then you're going to want to write a competitive price, right? You're going to want to offer a competitive price. Like typically, like if the house has been on the market in our area in Northern Virginia for about 7 days plus, you can offer a list price and get away with it, and that's okay. But if it's been on the market for 1 or 2 days and you know it's going to be a hot property, you're going to want to write a competitive price into your offer. Another tip is if you want to start at the starting price that they're asking for, you can use what's called an escalation addendum. Talk to your agent about it. It is super helpful. The next thing is flexible closing timeline, right? So are you flexible on the closing timeline? It's super important to understand that if the seller wants an extended closing, like we're doing one here where the seller wanted a 2-month close because they had so much stuff into the property and they didn't have time to move it out. So they wanted an extended close. So make sure that you have a flexible closing timeline and that you start the process really before you have to move out of your property. Because don't forget, like let's say you close today, your first payment won't be due until January 1st. If you close December 1st, your first payment won't be due until February 1st, right? So make sure that you can use that to factor it in so that way you're not having a double payment if you're in a rental or if you're selling your property and whatnot. So make sure you have a flexible timeline. The next thing is earnest money deposit. Even if you're using a VA loan and you're doing 0% down, I like to show, a little bit of our cards, right? So we would show like, hey, look, I'm willing to deposit, X amount of my money to risk it, right, on the line for my earnest money deposit. And your earnest money deposit is your money. You get it back if you get out on a contingency or the deal falls through and it's the fault of the seller. So make sure you show, at least 3% of earnest money deposit, depending on the property or how competitive it is. Sometimes we even do like 40, 50K just to show them that, hey, look, I have some of the money in the event that things fall through. I'm willing to risk it. The next thing is waiving contingencies, right? So the first contingency we see waived right now is home inspection. So what I would do in that case is you could do a walk and talk with a home inspector if you feel like you absolutely need to do a home inspection, or you could do a pre-inspection before you write the offer. It is going to cost you a little bit if you don't decide to write on the property, but if you feel comfortable with that, then it's a good way to waive that contingency and still feel comfortable with the property. So you could waive home inspection. Another thing people waive is financing. If you feel like your job might be in question in the next year or two, make sure that you don't waive financing. A lot of people waive appraisal. If you're super sure about the appraisal, you could waive it, but you are going to be responsible for that gap if it comes in low. So it's super important to understand that. Right now, we're not seeing people waive appraisals or financing. So make sure you talk to your agent about like what seems to be the best thing right now. Then you can write an offer letter, right? Like write an offer letter to the seller and say, hey, I really love your home because of XYZ. And tell them why they liked it, right? Tell them why you liked it. Tell them what you liked in the property that they might have chosen, right? If they have carpet in the bathroom and you're like, oh, I like that carpet in the bathroom that you guys have, like hopefully not, but like, you get the point. Like make sure you reference things that are personable to the seller and ask it to be presented with your offer, right? Especially if you notice like, maybe they had, like a dog or a cat. You could say like, hey, we have a dog or a cat also, or maybe like they had a guinea pig and you have a guinea pig. I don't know, right? But like think of ways that you can kind of draw parallels with them to kind of pull at their heartstrings a little bit. That's super helpful. The next thing is, you could also work. This is probably the most important thing, right? Make sure you work with a super reputable real estate agent. So I'll tell you guys a story. So there was this newer agent that came to me, and basically she needed help writing a home inspection removal addendum. And I practically wrote it for this gal. Like I wrote it. I was asking for basically the farm and $10,000 back to fix the HVAC system. Like it was like a really well written home inspection removal addendum. Well, she, I practically wrote it for her because she came to me for advice. I helped her out for it. And then 2 days later, I saw her and I was like, hey, like, how is the negotiating? Like, how did it go? Like, what did they say? And she's like, well, I'm trying to get like $2,500 now because, like they didn't like our initial offer and they were trying to give me a home warranty. And I was like, well, did you submit the 10K and ask them to do all the other stuff that we talked about? She's like, no, I talked to another agent, and like he didn't recommend that we do that. And I was like, man, like that's crazy. Like, I practically sat here and wrote it for you, and like, like I didn't tell her that, but anyways, like it's super important to work with someone that is a great negotiator, and you can tell that up front based on their confidence and based on their experience, right? So you want someone that is going to be a strong negotiator and well known in the marketplace. Also, they will also be able to help you with all these things that I just outlined for you and talking about writing a competitive offer. Even in a buyer's market or a seller's market, it's super important to have a strong negotiator so that way you can kind of like bridge that gap and be able to walk away feeling good about the property, right? So we had one recently where we were actually we were able to negotiate $65,000 off the list price. Like, I mean, and this property had only been on the market for 7 days, right? So we went in and we offered, like $75,000 lower, but we ended up at $65,000, right? Like, so I was able to get them off, like, basically like $65,000, like, off this property, and it's only been on the market for a few days. So, like, it's super important to have someone that's aggressive and someone that really knows how to write a crafty offer, especially when they're up against a weak agent. We could take full advantage of that. So make sure you hire the right agent, the right person to represent you during these deals, because it's going to make or break your deal. And depending on how you feel about that, you might not like it so much. So also, you got to be open to seller preferences. Like maybe the seller is like, hey, look, I don't want to close on a Friday because it's my holy day. Or I don't want to let go of this like light fixture that my wife loves and adore. And like sometimes you have to be okay with that. And that's going to play into like what the seller's motivation is and what their, like, why are they selling, right? Are they moving away to family? Are they downsizing? So maybe they want you guys to take some of the stuff in the property. So it's super important to understand what their motivation is and why they're selling, because like it's super, like helpful to them if you can help them with certain situations, like providing a rent back, right? So this is all things that your agent will be able to help you with, and especially at the beginning of the deal, like you're going to want them to call the seller's agent and ask like, hey, is there anything that the seller needs that we can help with, right, to make this offer better? Because it's not always that the best price makes the best offer. Sometimes it's the best terms, right? So, sometimes they want the rent back. Sometimes they're like, hey, look, like we just want like a super clean close, like quick close and that kind of thing. But sometimes like they're like, you know what? I need a 2-month rent back because we're moving down to, South Carolina, and our house is not going to be ready. So make sure you ask like, hey, is there something as important to your sellers than other than price, right? Other than money, right? Because obviously that's always, typically it's number 1 or 2, right? But make sure you understand like what the seller's motivation is and what's going to help them with their next move, because it's all about playing a win-win game here. So hope these tips were helpful to you guys. I hope you guys like enjoyed it, and you guys are going to go out there and win some offers. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button below, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.